Hello out there on YouTube. We just finished our third annual EM tournament, or EM only tournament here in Houston. Wrapped up about an hour ago. So we can give you all a bit of a walkthrough of the games. You can get a quick view of the outside, see the games as they look during the tournament. And then we'll be looking at inside look like we did last year. Those first two games were in the tournament last year. The second two were visiting games. So we'll get a good look inside them soon. Captain Fantastic at Super Score, these two repeats from last year, so we really won't be looking back inside them. Just a little look to see how things look. You'll be able to see all this on Wormhole. They did a nice stream from here earlier. New visitors of Top Score and Wild Wild West and El-Paso here. And the last game we used in the tournament, our Wedgehead Buccaneer. And finally, the one game we did not use in the tournament, I didn't get it working well enough for the tournament, was this very interesting one, Jupiter. You can see it is this hodgepodge of a game that was made in Italy from other Gottlieb parts. You know you're at a good start on IPDB when the maker is listed as unknown for their manufacturer. And yes, that is an actual digital display in the game. So we'll probably start looking into this game first. When we start opening things up, I'll cut away and open up everything and give you all a look inside. But if you want to look under that post-it note, you're going to have to go to IPDB. Alright, here we go. Let's start taking a look at the inside of some of these games. We're going to start with the lovely Wedgehead Buccaneer from our friend Mark. Now, we're going to start with this game, because if you're looking at getting into working on pinball machines, I would really suggest a nice Wedgehead like this. The first game I ever worked on was a Gottlieb top card, and it's just so much nicer to work on one of these single player games. You can kind of figure out what's going on a lot easier. It's nice that back here in the head of the game, which we didn't look at all inside last time, you can really see what's going on. You've only got one set of score reels. Having only 4 reels to look at and adjust instead of 16 is huge. That's going to really help you get going on a game, because getting the score reels working is often half the battle. A lot of little fidgety switches in there. Down here, this guy is what shows which player is up. So we had to reset all the way, and it just advances through each ball all the way to game over. And when you start a new game, it'll snap back over there, get you started on ball 1. This is your replay unit over here. Each time you win a game, it'll pop up on there. Got a couple little tabs in here that you bend together in order to put a game on free play. People have a lot better pictures and all of that. But that's just a general look in the back, so you can see what's going on there. Underneath the play field, where that big ship's wheel is, you can see all those lights on this big metal disc that forms a common ground. You can see where the spinner comes through. It lifts up and down on this wire, which every time it spins around makes a single contact there, adds up your score. And we've got our little Gottlieb vertically mounted little score motor here. So I'll show you the speed it goes at, so you can compare that to the next game. So that's that score motor, and this is the drop bank underneath that gets reset at the start of the game, because each time you collect one of the numbers up on the play field. Let's see if I can run my finger over some of these rollovers here at the top where you'll see them. When that light goes out, you'll see down on the other end, that's where these switches are dropping down. So you can see that got pulled in. If I run over with my finger, it gets pulled in. So that's where you collect all of your numbers that are on that ship's wheel and stuff that you're trying to collect to be able to earn specials and all that. When the game needs to be restarted, these big coils will pull in, reset all those lights, reset all those targets for you. Over here we have a very unique game that we didn't have in the tournament. This is Jupiter, which oddly enough has a digital display. Inside though, it's still an EM. First when I saw a picture of this, I thought it was maybe those late Gottlieb score reels that are imitation ring, you know, imitation digital, but nope, these are real digital scores. Real digital scoring mechanism. And as you can hear, has a wacky little sound card in it. This display, I don't know if it's going to come through in the video, the display is still vibrant. It is super nice. Someone must have worked on that over the years. Inside, you know, this is a strange hodgepodge of a machine. The playfield is a ripoff of a Gottlieb 2 and 4 player game, but this obviously now in a wedge head cabinet that's been repainted. The original paint underneath, I do not know what game it's from, but it doesn't match the playfield, and it doesn't match these mechanisms either. This big control bank reset here, it's from a Gottlieb export game called Star Trek. Not licensed from the show, and doesn't have the show's artwork or anything. Domestically, it was called Astro. But, you know, based on the markings on that, it says Star Trek on it, and that's obviously not what this is. But yeah, the inside of this cabinet's been repainted white. It's got the fuses are now over here. They've been moved from under the tilt mechanism over there. They've been moved from their smaller, more modern fuses. We've got the score motor, which, you know, I played you the one on Buccaneer. Over here, this one works, but I feel like it spins a little fast. And I think that's because it is a 220 volt game made for a different hertz rating than we have here in the US. Here we're on 60 hertz. At least in Britain they're 50 hertz. I'm not sure about Italy or the rest of Europe. We've got one little board here. I'm going to need to phone a friend on to get it working. You can see it's got a little burnt up pot. There's a little pot switch here. The cabinet's been replaced. It's got a burnt out trace. That's going to need some attention that I have not been able to give it. But mainly, that display is so interesting to have on here. Looking in the back, turn on light here, let it adjust a bit. Let you see that Electro board that and really is still providing a brilliant display, and our little soundboard, which I'm not as enthused about. But yeah, they're all wired down here into the relays. It's all still mechanically computed. And we've got the same little, you know, ball and play counter here. But unlike in Buccaneer where it would just do a full reset, it does notch one at a time. So I guess it's from, you know, an add-a-ball type game. Not entirely sure. And you can see I've got my little step-up converter so it can be running on 220 volts even though we're here in the US. Now the most unique game we had in the tournament was El-Paso from 1948. 30 years older than our newest game of Mars Trek from 1977. 29 year spread, I guess. Now, under here there's plenty under the playfield, but there is almost nothing. Nothing in the bottom of the cabinet. Just a couple of inserts and pop bumper caps that have fallen out while I've been testing this. It does not seem to have a prop rod. I don't see where one would have been, so it looks like you do just have to lean it against the head of the game. Down here all you've got is a couple tilt switches, one solitary little Jones plug for running your tilt bob and your flippers. There would have been some other electrical connections here. You can see going to the inside of the coin door that there was this meter plug that's listed as a play counter that has since gone missing. That you would push in what was originally a nickel mechanism. It's been moved up to a dime. You push that in, and on the bottom of the game, it's going to push in this whole mechanism. This is where that meshes to. So on the other games where we had our whole drop bank control relays, that's what we have again here. But instead of having a solenoid that resets everything, you reset it. It's got this linkage on the side, and when you push it on the coin door and it pushes down on there, pushes on all of this, caution, the bells are about to go off, push down on that, and that resets all of these manually. So they didn't need a coil because they had you pushing on it. And it also would have pushed on the other half of that game count meter we were talking about, but it apparently burned itself into oblivion many years ago, so that was gone off the game before I ever laid eyes on it. It was a friend Summer's game. I was so excited to have it in the tournament. Really needed very little work to get it going. One of the unique things on it were the flippers. They're actually kind of like what's on that Gottlieb Super Score, in that there is one coil operating two flippers. The solenoid pulls in and it rotates both flipper mechanisms. As you can see, it's a very small little coil, and with the end of stroke switch, it almost immediately cuts power. Because you push the button, either button, down here in the bottom of the game. They're two buttons, but they do the exact same thing. You can push either button, and it pulls that one mechanism in. Because it actually pulls this one little control relay in. That gets held when you hold the button. But that end of stroke switch immediately lets go up here, which keeps you from burning up that coil. But it also means you just get these momentary little flashes of these little backwards looking flippers, which was an awful lot of fun seeing people want to, wrap their heads around that. And when you reset the game and you push on that whole bar I was showing you, it also opens this flap at the bottom, and that's what drops the balls in. That means the game doesn't have to physically count the balls that are in the game. They just get dumped into the game, and you use the lever to pump them up onto the playfield one at a time. That's down here. We've got your main plunger, and there's a smaller one underneath that would lift each ball individually onto the playfield. Or I guess you can pump multiple up onto the playfield and have yourself a nice little multi-ball, but that's how it doesn't count the balls. They just get dropped in there, and you watch them go out one at a time. When you've played your last ball, the game's over, but the flippers still work. On some games there would be a timer. There may have been a timer associated with that game counter that burned up, but there's nothing of the sort left in this game, so it just keeps playing. Back in here, you've got your main score mechanism, which this ratchets up with every score of the hundred thousands and millions, and then gets reset at the end of the game. The transformer and everything's back here. Get your transformer, your little service outlet underneath where you could plug in your soldering iron or whatever. The replay unit is missing, so that was eliminated at some point, so I had to disconnect a few things to keep that from freaking out, but that's all there is back here. This is what does the 10,000s, that unit, and then the hundreds and millions are handled by that larger one up in the corner. Next to it, we've got Wild Wild West. This was my game for a while. I had it at the Game Preserve, and then Summer bought it. So these two games are both Summer's now. Underneath, unfortunately, this game was filthy when I got it. I initially I initially was disappointed in my purchase because of just how nasty this was inside. But I'd driven a long way. I bought it, even though maybe I shouldn't have, but it's ended up being a fun little game. When I showed you Super Score, it had this big bar in here that if you needed to lift the playfield, you had to yank on that bar. Fortunately, they'd removed that by this point. The unique feature on this game are the variable targets. There are plenty of games with variable targets, but this is the only one where when you hit the variable target and knock it back, usually it would, take a second to calculate your score and then drop back. This one, it locks, and then you hit it over and over, try and get it back as far as you want, and it only releases when you hit it in the associated little saucer kind of underneath it. And when you hit it in there, it would count, this would release and let the Vari-Target back forward. Now you may have noticed that this target didn't bounce all the way forward. That's because it had all the weight of this arm against it. And we're on quite an angle here. This isn't how the playfield would be during play. So I have it adjusted where it snaps forward nicely when it's in play, which means that you can collect it easier. If you had it where it snapped up early here, then in play that ball's going to be working that much harder to score. So I try and adjust it to where it is adjusted nicely when it is in the lowered position. So you have to, set it, lay it down, try it out, flip it back up. Takes a little more time, but results in better gameplay. Now, next to it we have Top Score, the 2-player version of 300. We fell in love with 300 in St. Louis a few years ago. This is my father-in-law's game. We just bought it from Jim. Whole lot of fun, but most of the neat stuff is up in the head with that little bonus mechanism with the red balls that move around up there. That's a whole lot of fun, but unfortunately not much to look at. Not much to see in here. Nice, really clean game, as you can see, compared to Wild Wild West next door. Same score motor and things like that they're used to on these Gottlieb games. Fun game. It's got one little gate, but that's about it for little mechanisms under here. Fortunately, this one's in pretty good shape and I haven't had to do much with it. Super Score we looked at last year. Captain Fantastic that we looked at last year. I erroneously called it a Williams game for some reason, but of course it is a Bally title. Another Bally title was this lovely Fireball from Mike and Dawn. Played great in the tournament. For some reason my 1.5-year-old absolutely adores this game compared to any other. He's always over here trying to put quarters in it. And it is in lovely shape inside. I think the guy Mike bought it from had done a lot of work on it. All good and clean. Big old score motor. That motor there is the one that rotates the values. When you're in that left saucer. Ball count unit. Transformer and all that fun stuff. The old fuse holder still holding up. And this one has had some LED lights added. Some colorful ones I'm not too crazy on, but I did think this was neat. It's got a little extra transformer in it that powers some lights on the apron, and these nice little lights for the flipper buttons, which really do look nice. But when you're under the game, you need to be able to see that pesky little spinning platform that the ball's always going over. It's really a nice smooth acting mechanism still. And of course, the zipper flippers. These things are a lot of fun, and the mechanism's pretty simple for how it works compared to what you might think. It's got this one solenoid looking deal in the back. I've seen some older games where it does look more like a traditional coil, but anyway, that pulls this back, and this latch is what holds it up, and that's so now the flippers up here are moved in. Then when you run over that button that pops them back out, this releases and the two flipper mechanisms move out. So it's just this one thing, pulls it in, locks it, then this little coil fires, pulls down on that, unlatches it, and the flippers move back out. Neat mechanism that a lot happens with just a couple coils. They just hinge these whole flipper mechanisms on there. Let's zoom out a bit. They just hinge these whole flipper mechanisms. Really neat design. And the only mechanical failure we had going on during a game was this one coil stop came off. It was just the screws had backed out, so mid-game we lifted it up, screwed that back together. Game went on its merry way. Really played very nice. And our last title to talk about, sorry, it is getting to be almost 1 o'clock here. Last title here is Rancho. Came from the Lowe's. Another really nice game. Good, clean condition. The big thing that happened with it was the score motor. It was acting really sluggish when it got here. I mean, it was working, but it was turning so slow that it was really hampering gameplay. I'll probably cut in some photos here to show you what the little armature inside looked like. There's supposed to be two little nubs on the spinning armature, the little part that spins inside of the score motor. The actual motor's on this end. When it gets current, pulls in, rotates, spins real fast, turns through a gearbox to make all these little switches be activated. But those two little nubs that needed to engage with the clutch had worn almost completely off. But fortunately I was able to get with Pinball Resource, and they mailed me what appears to be a remanufactured one. And that has made all the difference. The score motor is working beautifully now. But like on the other games, we got our control bank up here, gets reset, bonus unit, all that fun stuff. But anyway, I think we're about done here. Had a nice tournament. Sorry for my more tired performance this time in videoing, but wanted to get this done tonight. As you can see, it's almost 1 o'clock, but hey, we had a great time. Thanks for tagging along. Have a good one.